The Old Testament prophet Jeremiah was known as the weeping prophet because he wrote a book lamenting the corruption and eventual destruction of Jerusalem. The title Angry Prophet would be a suitable description of Gerald Celente, founder of the TrendsResearchInstitute and publisher of the TrendsJournal. Although Celente makes no claim to a divine supernatural gift, he's been uncannily accurate in predicting significant social and economic trends. As he looks forward, Celente doesn't like what he sees, and rather than crying about it, he's madder than hell and hopes that you will be too. Gerald, welcome back to the program. Years ago, you warned that we were headed into another global war. Last year, you said that the war you had foreseen had already begun. Where is that conflict being fought, and what is going to be its impact on our economy and our freedoms?
It's being fought in many places around the world in different forms. So let's take what's going on in Egypt, for example. There was never an Arab Spring, and we've said that before it happened. What it is my saying, when people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. It's corruption. Few people at the top of the pyramid getting all the dough and everybody else suffering. So there's riots in the street. Here comes the new boss, same as the old boss. We said that when the revolution happened. So you're seeing it again inflamed, and it's out of control. They won't be able to control it. Then move over to Syria. Same thing going on over there. It's a civil war being instigated by the Arab League and NATO. That's destabilizing the entire region. Look at Libya. Oh, that wonderful humanitarian mission that our president, Obama, started. You remember that one, that time-limited, scope-limited kinetic action. Nobody could call it what it is. So it's a war, and it's destabilizing the area as it is down in Mali and other areas of North Africa. And then you go over to Yemen and Bahrain, take a trip over to Greece and Spain and Portugal. Portugal's collapsing in front of us, as is Spain and Greece. So there are different elements of war going on, whether it's class warfare, civil war, or regional wars. Oh, I forgot Turkey. How could I forget that? Millions of people taking to the streets for essentially the same reasons: corruption, wealth inequality, and repressive governments. And then we could take a march down to Brazil. Millions and millions of people taking to the streets for the same reason. So you see, Gary, what people think is that, oh, it's going to be another Pearl Harbor and the world will go to war. No, no, no. It's not the way it works. You have all these little wars going on, as I said, civil wars, wars in the region, people rebelling off with their head wars. And it builds up into a world war, and that's what we're moving into.
Now, Gerald, you mentioned Syria, and John McCain was actually photographed in the company of al-Qaeda rebels in that country, and he says Washington should arm them in order to deter Iran. Why isn't McCain being prosecuted under federal law for providing material aid to al-Qaeda and detained indefinitely under the National Defense Authorization Act?
Well, they only use that to get the people that they don't like. How come Bush and Blair and Cheney and Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz and all of the rest of those neocons that sent us to war against Iraq, and Colin Powell, how come they're not being brought up on war crime tribunals? Who knew what when? Why do we have to accept what they said when what they said was a lie? Who knew it was a lie, and who pushed it through as the truth? So you see, Gary, none of the heads roll in D.C. They're above the law. The law is just for the rest of us.
Now, Gerald, yesterday, two supposedly independent countries, France and Portugal, denied their airspace to a plane carrying Bolivian President Evo Morales because they were afraid that Edward Snowden might be on board. This was done to appease the Obama administration. Did the Soviet Union have this much control over its satellites?
Well, you know, yes. and the United States does too, even over the Soviet Union, as it appears. Because we heard Putin say that he would grant Snowden a refuge if he continued to shut his mouth and behaved like a good boy. So when you see that the pressure the United States exerts over the rest of the world and how Snowden is not able to find any refuge, it's really astounding, particularly when you look back and see what happened in Ecuador with their President Carrera, who first said he was going to grant Snowden asylum. And then he got a call from Joe Biden and changed his mind. And you're even seeing countries like Venezuela kowtow. If, you know, with their new president in there, it's a very different story than the old boss. So we're seeing the pressure the United States can exert over foreign countries, and I find it quite astounding.
Gerald, you've referred to something you call the $80 billion a year privacy-killing industry. Could you explain exactly what that is?
Yes, according to the Financial Times, we the people in this land of the free and home of the brave are spending $80 billion for the government to watch over us and watch everybody else around the world. And just as Eisenhower warned us about a military-industrial complex taking over the nation and robbing us of the genius of the scientists, the sweat of the laborers, and the future of the children, the cyber-industrial complex is now taking over as well. According to the Financial Times, 850,000 private contractors are watching us. And then you look at the people who are involved in the schemes. As we heard the name Booz Allen Hamilton, Booz, it's a great one. Yeah, and the head of Booz over there is a guy named Mike McConnell. And you know where he came from? He's the CEO now of Booz. He was the national security advisor under Bill Slick Willie Clinton from 1992 to 1996. Isn't that nice? Talking about a revolving door. And check it out. We have 850,000 private contractors watching us, and we're not allowed to know what's going on. It's a top secret, I tell you. And if we let anybody know what's going on, oh, that's going to help the terrorists. What am I, 3 years old? Who are they talking to over here?
Now, Gerald,
this is a lot of crap.
Gerald,
and by the way, I want to make this 100% clear. We wrote in our TrendsJournal in the spring of 2012, virtually everything that Snowden is talking about now. This was public information, but the public never knew about it because it was only reported in bits and pieces where most people couldn't find it. The only new thing that Snowden's come out with is the proof and that we're spying on everybody all over the world. And guess what? There's never been a revolution in America. There was no American Revolution. The SOBs from the British over there are still running the show because that's who we're in cahoots with as you're reading what's going on now.
Gerald, you've also said that the NSA's prison program is the prelude to the hunt for undesirables. When do you expect that to get underway? What does it exactly mean?
What it means is that when this economy continues to decline, there's been no recovery. We see what's happening now with the markets since Osama Ben Bernanke came out on May 22nd and warned us that they were going to taper the money printing scheme and stop buying up bonds and rigging the bond market to $85 billion a month tune that they're doing it now and slow down the printing of cheap money. So what is going to happen, as you're seeing going on all over the world, in Portugal, in Spain, in Greece, in Turkey, in Brazil, with millions of people taking to the streets, when it happens here, boy, Big Bro is gonna beat you down. Orwell never dreamed of what they're doing now. So they're putting all of the security apparatus in place to keep the people in their place.
Gerald, another theme that you speak of frequently is the subject of justice versus just us. The case of Bank of America offers a good example when a San Diego man was recently threatened with 8 years in prison for writing anti-bank slogans in chalk outside the Bank of America branch offices. Yet not a single Bank of America official has been prosecuted for fraud. Is this typical of how justice operates today in America?
Yes. I mean, you mentioned earlier about McCain. I mean, look at the guys that they go after in this country. Look who the public enemy number ones are. A bunch of young kids. Yeah, Bradley Manning, now there's a real threat. Look at this guy Snowden, another kid. Remember they closed down 100 square miles of Boston to hunt for a 19-year-old kid? I mean, come on. You know, there's not one. Oh, remember Obama? Hey, you liberals out there. Remember your El Presidente was going to get tough on all those Wall Street crooks and banking criminals? How many heads have rolled since the panic of '08? Not one major head has rolled on Wall Street for the crimes that they committed against we the people. But hey, don't open up that lemonade stand either, because the cops will swoop down on you. Don't plant a garden in your front yard. They'll put you in your place. No, the whole country, you know what this is? It's the merger of state and corporate powers. And by definition, that's called fascism. And that's what we have now.
Now, Gerald, I want to talk about a recent report that states 76% of the American population is living paycheck to paycheck. And what happened to the economic recovery that we were promised?
Again, the money just went to the bigs. And as I said, when I say fascism, how about 4 words that killed capitalism? Too big to fail. And where do you think the banks are getting the dough from? I mean, with all of this QE3 and all of the 0 interest rates, they're getting the money for almost nothing. And this is an interest rate recovery, by the way. And as I've said from the beginning, as soon as interest rates go up, the economy is going to go down. And you look at the jobs that have been created since the Great Recovery began. They lost mostly middle-income jobs. That's a fact. And most of the jobs that have been created are low-income paying jobs. That's a fact. Hey, you want to be a bartender or a waitress? There could be a job for you. How about in hospitality? Yeah, making beds in hotels. That's a swell career booster. Why not in ambulatory services, or how about home health care? Very essential jobs that pay nothing, because the only jobs that pay a lot of money are from the hedge funds and the other criminals that are robbing the nation. So there is no recovery. It's a cover-up, and the only money that they have dumped out has gone to the already 1%. They're bringing it up to a higher level.
Now, Gerald, I want to talk about the gold and silver now, because some Americans have tried to save some of what they earn and preserve their wealth by buying gold and silver. What exactly is happening in the precious metals markets today? Have they been manipulated by political insiders?
I believe they'd be manipulated by the central banks. I mean, just like they manipulated sending $17 trillion, our Federal Reserve, into banks around the world, including those in the United States, to prop up the economy. Just as the LIBOR rates have been rigged right in front of everybody's eyes. Nobody even talks about it. $700 trillion worth of transactions rigged by LIBOR. Why wouldn't anybody think that they're not rigging the gold prices by all of these naked shorts and manipulating the paper side of the gold market? And because if the price of gold goes up, people realize that their schemes of money printing are debasing the currency. And then you look what's going on in India and other countries. They're raising the import prices of gold to prohibit the people from buying it, or to drive down demand so they can keep their Ponzi schemes going. I'm in gold for the long term. I believe that the downside of gold is about $100 to $150 lower than it is now. I mean, that's my best estimate. But the upside is, you know, it could go well over $2,000 an ounce. Because at some point, the Ponzi scheme is going to collapse. And also, as you're seeing war talk heat up, the safe haven calls for gold also get hotter. And I want to make this one last point. I began trading gold in 1978. I remember when gold began to collapse in January 20th, 1980. I bought gold that day at the highest point in the trading day at $875 an ounce. I remember how the panic hit the streets. It's a very different emotion right now. Because back then, people weren't buying physical as they are now. And you know what happened when gold first started to collapse. The demand for physical skyrocketed. That didn't happen back then. And back then, there was no Russia. It was the Soviet Union. Everybody east of Berlin was locked behind the Iron Curtain. China wasn't doing business. You know, nobody even knew they had an economy. India, you know, the only thing people knew about India, they heard about a guy named, what was his name? Gandhi. You know, they didn't know about India. What I'm trying to say, it's a global economy now. The market could only be rigged so much. And as I said, I'm in gold for the long term, and I'm not selling.
Well, let's talk about practical advice. What can you give to Americans who understand the seriousness of our situation?
Do what you can to change it, and begin by changing yourself. Are you in the best shape you could be spiritually, emotionally, and physically? Because when you get into that shape and you have courage, dignity, self-respect, you don't take the crap that these low-life sociopaths are dumping down on us, and you become more active. On the individual level, this is the summertime. Buy as much as you can local. Break the chains. Don't go to chain stores when you don't have to. Pay a couple of pennies more to support your local merchants. Build your community. Start at home. The grassroots, that's where it all changes. And again, as I don't give financial advice, but for me, you know, it's still Gerald Celente's GC's 3 Gs, guns, gold, and a getaway plan.